Have you ever wondered what thousands of older Americans cooked when they only had 10 minutes, a few dollars, and no one else at the dinner table? Long before frozen meals and food delivery apps, simple vintage dinners kept seniors nourished with little effort and even less expense. These meals were not fancy, but they carried memories of hard times, family traditions, and remarkable resourcefulness. Today, we are uncovering 15 cheap vintage 10-minute dinners that once filled quiet kitchens across America. Some may surprise you, while others might bring back memories you have not thought about in decades. Stay with us until the end, because the final meal was once considered one of the most comforting dinners an older generation ever relied on. Scrambled eggs on toast. Long before microwave dinners filled grocery store freezer aisles, one of America's quickest and most dependable evening meals was nothing more than scrambled eggs served over buttered toast. For countless seniors living alone during the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, this simple dinner was more than a way to satisfy hunger. It was a familiar routine that brought comfort after a long day without creating a sink full of dirty dishes. The recipe could hardly have been easier. 2 fresh eggs were beaten with a fork, seasoned with a pinch of salt and black pepper, then gently cooked in a buttered skillet until soft and creamy. Thick slices of white bread were toasted until golden, spread with butter while still warm, and topped with the fluffy eggs. In less than 10 minutes, dinner was ready. What made this meal special was not its appearance but its reliability. Eggs were inexpensive, bread was always tucked away in the bread box, and butter was a staple in nearly every refrigerator. Even during weeks when grocery money was tight, these 3 ingredients were usually enough to put a warm meal on the table. Many older Americans still remember the comforting aroma of butter melting into fresh toast and the rich flavor of softly scrambled eggs. It was a meal that asked for very little, yet offered a surprising sense of satisfaction. Best of all, cleanup took only moments, making it ideal for anyone with limited energy or mobility. Although countless modern convenience foods have replaced it, scrambled eggs on toast remains one of the most enduring symbols of practical home cooking. And if you think this classic was inexpensive, the next forgotten dinner was even easier to prepare and relied on nothing more than a single can sitting quietly in the pantry. Creamy tomato soup with buttered bread. There was a time when one humble can of tomato soup could turn an ordinary evening into a comforting meal. During the 1960s and 1970s, many seniors living alone kept canned tomato soup tucked away in the pantry because it was inexpensive, dependable, and ready in just a few minutes. On cold evenings or days when cooking felt like too much effort, this simple supper was often the perfect answer. Preparing it required almost no skill. A can of condensed tomato soup was poured into a small saucepan, mixed with water or milk, and gently heated until steam began to rise. While the soup warmed, 2 slices of white bread were spread generously with butter. Some people toasted the bread until golden, while others preferred it soft enough to soak up every spoonful of the rich tomato broth. The aroma filling the kitchen was unmistakable. The sweet scent of ripe tomatoes blended with creamy butter created a feeling of warmth long before the first bite. The soup was smooth, slightly tangy, and surprisingly filling despite its simple ingredients. This meal became a favorite because canned soup could remain on the shelf for months without spoiling. Buying several cans during a grocery sale meant dinner was always available, even when fresh ingredients were running low or another trip to the store was impossible. It was practical, affordable, and required only 1 pot to prepare and 1 bowl to wash afterward. Although today's grocery stores offer countless ready-made meals, many older Americans still remember the quiet comfort that came from a steaming bowl of tomato soup shared only with a slice of buttered bread. Yet the next forgotten dinner transformed this same pantry staple into something even heartier, creating a combination that families enjoyed for generations. Grilled cheese sandwich. Few vintage dinners captured the feeling of home quite like a hot grilled cheese sandwich. During the 1950s, 1960s, and well into the 1970s, this simple meal became a favorite for seniors living alone because it was inexpensive, filling, and could be prepared in less than 10 minutes. With only a few everyday ingredients, it transformed an ordinary evening into something warm and satisfying. The recipe was wonderfully straightforward. 2 slices of white bread were lightly buttered on the outside, while a slice of American cheese was tucked neatly between them. The sandwich was placed in a hot skillet and slowly toasted until the bread turned crisp and golden. As the cheese softened and melted, the kitchen filled with the irresistible aroma of butter and freshly toasted bread. The first bite delivered a perfect balance of crunchy crust and creamy melted cheese. Many people paired it with a glass of milk or served it alongside a bowl of warm soup, but the sandwich was hearty enough to stand on its own. It offered comfort without requiring expensive ingredients or complicated preparation. Its popularity came from more than just its taste. Bread and cheese were staples in most American homes, making this dinner easy to prepare without a special trip to the grocery store. It also required only one skillet, making cleanup quick and simple for older adults who preferred meals that did not leave a pile of dishes behind. Although countless convenience foods have appeared over the decades, few have matched the timeless appeal of a freshly made grilled cheese sandwich. It remains a reminder of an era when simple ingredients and careful home cooking were enough to create a meal worth remembering. But the next forgotten dinner skipped the stove altogether, proving that even a pantry shelf could provide a satisfying supper in just a few minutes. Tuna salad on saltine crackers. Not every satisfying dinner needed a stove. During the 1960s and 1970s, tuna salad on saltine crackers became one of the quickest meals seniors living alone could prepare. It was affordable, packed with protein, and required almost no effort, making it a dependable choice on warm evenings or days when cooking simply felt like too much work. The preparation was as simple as opening a pantry. A small can of tuna was drained and mixed with a spoonful of mayonnaise, a pinch of salt, and a dash of black pepper. Some added finely chopped celery or a little pickle relish if they happened to have it, but many enjoyed it just as it was. The creamy tuna mixture was then spooned onto crisp saltine crackers, creating a meal that could be ready in less than 5 minutes. The contrast in texture made every bite enjoyable. The crackers provided a light, satisfying crunch, while the tuna was smooth, creamy, and rich with flavor. It was a simple combination, yet one that felt surprisingly complete without requiring any cooking or cleanup beyond a bowl and a fork. This dinner became especially popular because canned tuna had a long shelf life and was inexpensive enough to keep stocked in the pantry year-round. Crackers stayed fresh for weeks, making the entire meal easy to prepare whenever hunger struck. For many older Americans, it was a reliable supper that offered nourishment without the heat of an oven or the hassle of washing pots and pans. While modern convenience foods have taken its place in many homes, tuna salad on crackers remains a reminder that some of the best meals were built from simple pantry staples. But if this cold supper was perfect for summer evenings, the next forgotten dinner returned to the stovetop with a hearty combination that filled kitchens with the comforting aroma of baked beans and smoky hot dogs. Hot dogs and baked beans. Few dinners stretched a small grocery budget better than hot dogs and baked beans. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, this hearty combination became a familiar sight in the kitchens of seniors living alone. It was inexpensive, satisfying, and could be prepared in less than 10 minutes using ingredients that were almost always available. The meal was wonderfully simple. 1 or 2 hot dogs were gently simmered in a small saucepan while a can of baked beans warmed on the stove. Once everything was hot, the beans were spooned onto a plate beside the hot dogs. Some people sliced the hot dogs into the beans, creating a one-bowl supper, while others served them with a slice of buttered white bread to soak up the sweet sauce. The aroma was instantly recognizable. The smoky scent of the hot dogs blended with the rich fragrance of baked beans simmered with molasses and brown sugar. Every bite combined sweet, savory, and smoky flavors that felt surprisingly filling for such an inexpensive meal. Its popularity came from practicality. Hot dogs stayed fresh in the refrigerator for days, and canned baked beans could remain in the pantry for months. There was no complicated preparation, no special ingredients, and very little cleanup afterward. For older Americans living on fixed incomes, it offered a dependable dinner that required little effort while providing enough protein and energy to end the day comfortably. Although today's supermarkets are filled with frozen entrees and ready-made meals, many people still remember this classic supper as a symbol of simple home cooking. It proved that satisfying meals did not have to be expensive or complicated. Yet the next forgotten dinner skipped the stove almost entirely, combining creamy dairy and sweet fruit into a surprisingly popular vintage meal that many seniors once considered the perfect light supper. Cottage cheese with canned peaches. Not every vintage dinner was served hot. During the 1960s and 1970s, cottage cheese with canned peaches became a surprisingly common supper for seniors living alone. It was inexpensive, nutritious, and required no cooking at all, making it an ideal choice on warm evenings or days when preparing a full meal felt unnecessary. The recipe could not have been simpler. A generous scoop of cottage cheese was placed into a small bowl, then topped with several slices of canned peaches that had been drained of their syrup. Some people sprinkled a little black pepper over the cottage cheese for extra flavor, while others enjoyed the natural sweetness of the peaches without adding anything at all. In just a few minutes, dinner was ready. The combination offered a unique balance of flavors and textures. The cottage cheese was cool, creamy, and slightly tangy, while the peaches added a soft, juicy sweetness that brightened every bite. Together, they created a meal that felt light yet surprisingly satisfying, especially during the summer months. This simple supper became popular because both ingredients were affordable and easy to keep on hand. Cottage cheese provided protein and calcium, while canned peaches remained fresh in the pantry for months. For seniors on fixed incomes, it was an economical way to enjoy a nourishing meal without turning on the stove or washing a sink full of dishes. Although modern grocery stores now offer countless ready-made salads and refrigerated meals, many older Americans still remember this combination as a comforting reminder of a simpler time. It reflected an era when practicality mattered just as much as flavor, and even the most modest ingredients could create a satisfying dinner. But if this cool and refreshing meal seemed too light, the next forgotten favorite returned to the frying pan with a canned classic that became a pantry staple in millions of American homes. Fried Spam Sandwich. During the 1960s and 1970s, few pantry staples were as dependable as a can of Spam. For many seniors living alone, it offered a quick, affordable dinner that required only a few minutes on the stove. While fresh meat was not always practical or affordable, Spam had a long shelf life, making it a reliable choice whenever the refrigerator looked nearly empty. Preparing this meal was simple. A few slices of Spam were cut from the can and placed into a hot skillet without needing much oil, since the meat released its own fat as it cooked. Within minutes, the edges became beautifully browned and slightly crispy. The sizzling slices were then tucked between two pieces of soft white bread, often with a thin layer of yellow mustard or a touch of mayonnaise for extra flavor. The aroma filling the kitchen was rich and savory, with the unmistakable scent of browned pork that reminded many people of family breakfasts and simple home-cooked suppers. Each bite offered a satisfying contrast between the crisp outer edges of the Spam and the soft bread surrounding it. It was hearty enough to satisfy hunger while costing only a fraction of a traditional meat dinner. This sandwich became especially popular because one could provide several meals throughout the week. Seniors appreciated that it required very little preparation, produced almost no waste, and could be made whenever time or energy was limited. It was practical cooking at its finest, built around ingredients that stayed fresh long after fresh meat had disappeared from the refrigerator. Although Spam eventually became associated with old-fashioned pantry cooking, it remains a lasting symbol of mid-century American resourcefulness. For many families, it represented making the most of what was available without sacrificing a warm meal. But the next forgotten dinner proved that even a box of instant potatoes could become a comforting supper in less than 10 minutes. Instant mashed potatoes with brown gravy. For many seniors living alone, few dinners were as comforting as a bowl of instant mashed potatoes covered with warm brown gravy. During the 1970s and early 1980s, this simple meal became a household favorite because it was inexpensive, filling, and could be prepared in less than 10 minutes. It brought the comforting flavors of a Sunday dinner without the time, cost, or effort of cooking an entire roast. Making it was remarkably easy. Water was brought to a boil, instant potato flakes were stirred into the pot, and a little butter and milk were added until the potatoes became smooth and creamy. At the same time, a small can or jar of brown gravy was gently heated on the stove. Once everything was ready, The rich gravy was poured generously over the fluffy mashed potatoes, creating a warm and satisfying meal. The aroma was enough to bring back memories of family gatherings. The buttery scent of mashed potatoes blended with the savory fragrance of beef gravy, filling the kitchen with a comforting smell that made the meal feel far more elaborate than it really was. Every spoonful was creamy, rich, and hearty, offering comfort with every bite. Its popularity came from convenience. Both instant potatoes and canned gravy had long shelf lives, making them reliable pantry staples. Seniors appreciated that they could prepare a hot dinner without peeling potatoes, making gravy from scratch, or washing several pots and pans. It was an economical solution that fit both tight budgets and limited energy. Although fresh homemade mashed potatoes remain a family favorite today, this quick version has quietly faded from many kitchens. Yet for countless older Americans, it was a dependable supper that proved simple ingredients could still provide genuine comfort. But the next forgotten dinner was even easier, combining two everyday favorites into a sweet and satisfying meal that required almost no cooking at all. Peanut butter and banana sandwich. Before protein bars and ready-made snack packs filled grocery store shelves, one of the quickest and most satisfying dinners for seniors living alone was a peanut butter and banana sandwich. During the 1960s and 1970s, this simple meal offered a perfect balance of affordability, nutrition, and convenience. It required no cooking, no special equipment, and could be prepared in just a few minutes. The recipe was wonderfully straightforward. 2 slices of soft white bread were generously spread with creamy peanut butter, then topped with slices of a ripe banana before the sandwich was gently pressed together. Some people added a drizzle of honey for extra sweetness, while others sprinkled a pinch of cinnamon over the bananas. Either way, it became a filling meal that was both comforting and satisfying. The aroma was subtle but inviting. The roasted peanuts blended with the natural sweetness of fresh bananas, creating a familiar scent that reminded many people of childhood lunches and simple family kitchens. Every bite combined creamy peanut butter with soft fruit and fresh bread, offering a rich texture that kept hunger away for hours. Its popularity came from practicality. Peanut butter lasted for weeks in the pantry, bananas were inexpensive in most grocery stores, and bread was already a household staple. For seniors living on fixed incomes, this sandwich provided protein, energy, and flavor without requiring a stove, an oven, or even a frying pan. It was the kind of dependable meal that could be prepared anytime, whether for lunch, dinner, or a late-night snack. Although modern convenience foods have changed the way many people eat, the peanut butter and banana sandwich remains a timeless reminder that some of America's best comfort foods were also its simplest. Yet the next forgotten dinner returned to the stovetop once again, transforming a single can into a hot, hearty meal that generations of older Americans never forgot. Canned corned beef hash. Long before frozen dinners became the norm, canned corned beef hash was a dependable supper for countless seniors living alone. During the 1960s and 1970s, this pantry staple offered a hearty meal that could be prepared in less than 10 minutes. It combined meat and potatoes in one can, making it an economical choice for anyone looking for a filling dinner without spending much time in the kitchen. Preparing it was wonderfully simple. The can was opened, and the hash was emptied into a hot skillet. As it cooked, the bottom slowly turned golden brown and crispy while the inside remained soft and tender. Many people carefully flipped sections with a spatula to brown both sides before serving it with a spoonful of ketchup or a few slices of buttered toast. The aroma was unmistakable. The rich scent of brown potatoes mixed with savory corned beef filled the kitchen, creating the comforting smell of a homemade meal. Every bite offered a satisfying combination of crispy edges, tender potatoes, and seasoned beef that made the dish feel far more substantial than its simple ingredients suggested. Its popularity came from both convenience and value. One can contained everything needed for a complete meal, and because it stayed fresh for months on the pantry shelf, it was always ready whenever fresh groceries were running low. Seniors appreciated that it required only one skillet, very little preparation, and almost no cleanup afterward. Although healthier eating trends eventually pushed canned corned beef hash out of many kitchens, it remains a nostalgic reminder of practical American cooking. For generations, it represented making the most of affordable pantry staples while still enjoying a hot, satisfying dinner. But if this hearty skillet meal felt too filling, the next forgotten favorite required almost no cooking at all and became a surprisingly popular choice for warm summer evenings. Sardines on toast. For many seniors living alone, a tin of sardines tucked away in the pantry was more than an emergency food. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, sardines on toast provided a quick, inexpensive dinner that was packed with protein and required almost no preparation. While younger generations often overlooked this humble meal, it remained a trusted favorite for those who valued practicality over appearance. Preparing it was remarkably simple. A slice of white or wheat bread was toasted until crisp and lightly buttered while still warm. A small tin of sardines was then opened, and the fish were carefully placed on top of the toast. Some people added a squeeze of fresh lemon juice or a thin layer of yellow mustard, while others preferred a sprinkle of black pepper to enhance the flavor. Within 5 minutes, dinner was ready. The aroma was distinctive, carrying the fresh scent of the sea with hints of oil and toasted bread. The sardines were tender and rich, while the crisp toast provided the perfect contrast in texture. Although it was not a glamorous meal, it was deeply satisfying and surprisingly nutritious, offering healthy fats, calcium, and protein in every serving. Its popularity came from convenience. Sardines could remain unopened in the pantry for years, making them an ideal choice when fresh groceries were running low. They were affordable, required no cooking, and created very little cleanup, qualities that mattered to seniors who preferred simple, dependable meals. As food trends changed and fresh seafood became easier to find, sardines on toast gradually disappeared from many American dinner tables. Yet for those who grew up relying on pantry staples, it remains a reminder of a time when resourcefulness mattered more than presentation. But the next forgotten dinner took simplicity even further, turning an ordinary kitchen staple into a warm bowl of comfort that could be prepared in just a few minutes. Egg drop soup. When time, money, and energy were all in short supply, many seniors turned to one of the simplest hot meals imaginable. Homemade egg drop soup was not meant to impress guests. During the 1970s and early 1980s, it was a quick, comforting supper that could be prepared in just a few minutes using ingredients already sitting in the kitchen. For those living alone, it was warm, nourishing, and wonderfully easy to make. The recipe began with a cup of chicken broth, often made by dissolving a bouillon cube in boiling water. Once the broth started to simmer, a beaten egg was slowly poured into the pot while gently stirring with a fork. Within seconds, delicate ribbons of cooked egg floated through the broth. Some seniors added a splash of soy sauce, a pinch of black pepper, or a sprinkle of dried parsley to give the soup a little extra flavor, but many enjoyed it exactly as it was. The aroma was light and comforting, filled with the familiar scent of warm chicken broth. Every spoonful was smooth, delicate, and easy to enjoy, making it especially popular on chilly evenings or days when a heavier meal simply did not appeal. It warmed the body without requiring much effort in the kitchen. This simple supper became popular because it relied on inexpensive pantry staples. Bouillon cubes lasted for months, eggs were affordable, and the entire meal required only one small saucepan to prepare. For seniors on fixed incomes, it was an economical way to enjoy a homemade dinner without spending much time cooking or cleaning. Although today's grocery stores offer countless instant soups, many older Americans still remember this homemade version as a quiet reminder that comfort did not need to be complicated. But the next forgotten dinner proved that even plain noodles and a little butter could become one of the most satisfying meals of all. Buttered egg noodles. Few dinners were as simple or comforting as a bowl of buttered egg noodles. During the 1960s and 1970s, this humble meal became a favorite among seniors living alone because it was inexpensive, filling, and could be prepared in about 10 minutes. With only a handful of pantry staples, it provided a warm supper that required very little effort after a long day. Preparing it was wonderfully easy. A small pot of water was brought to a boil, and a handful of egg noodles was cooked until tender. After draining the water, the noodles were returned to the pot with a generous spoonful of butter, allowing it to melt into every strand. Many people finished the dish with a sprinkle of grated Parmesan cheese, while others added a pinch of black pepper or chopped parsley for extra flavor. The result was a rich, buttery meal that felt far more satisfying than its modest ingredients suggested. The aroma filling the kitchen was warm and inviting. Melted butter blended with the gentle scent of freshly cooked noodles, creating a comforting smell that reminded many older Americans of family suppers and homemade Sunday dinners. Every bite was soft, creamy, and soothing, making it especially appealing on cool evenings or whenever a simple meal was all that was needed. This dinner became popular because noodles were affordable, stored well in the pantry, and cooked quickly. Butter was a common household staple, meaning there was rarely a need for an extra trip to the grocery store. Cleanup was just as easy, requiring only one pot and a fork. Although today's kitchens are filled with frozen entrees and boxed convenience meals, buttered egg noodles remain a timeless reminder that comfort often came from the simplest recipes. But the next forgotten dinner skipped the stove almost entirely, relying on another classic pantry staple that could satisfy hunger in just a matter of minutes. Vienna sausages with saltine crackers. For many seniors living alone, dinner did not always require a stove or even a frying pan. During the 1970s and 1980s, Vienna sausages with saltine crackers became one of the quickest meals a person could prepare. It was inexpensive, easy to store, and ready the moment hunger appeared, making it a dependable pantry favorite for countless older Americans. The meal was incredibly simple. A small can of Vienna sausages was opened using the pull-tab lid, and the sausages were drained before being placed on a plate. They were served alongside a handful of crisp saltine crackers, and some people added a little yellow mustard or a slice of cheddar cheese if they happened to have it in the refrigerator. In less than 5 minutes, dinner was complete. The flavor was mild yet satisfying. The tender sausages had a savory, lightly seasoned taste, while the crackers added a crisp texture that balanced each bite. Although it was not a meal that would impress guests, it was filling enough to quiet an empty stomach and required almost no effort to prepare. Its popularity came from convenience. Vienna sausages could sit unopened in the pantry for months, making them an excellent emergency food for seniors who preferred to keep simple ingredients on hand. They were affordable, high in protein, and required no cooking, which was especially helpful for those with limited energy or mobility. Best of all, cleanup was minimal, usually nothing more than a plate and a fork. As grocery stores introduced more refrigerated convenience foods, this humble supper slowly faded from everyday life. Yet many older Americans still remember it as one of the easiest dinners they could make without spending time in the kitchen. But the next forgotten meal traded savory flavors for something warm and comforting, proving that even a bowl of hot cereal could become a satisfying evening supper. Cream of wheat with brown sugar. Long before instant breakfast shakes became popular, many seniors ended their day with a warm bowl of cream of wheat. During the 1960s and 1970s, this simple hot cereal was not reserved only for breakfast. It often became a quick, inexpensive dinner that could be prepared in less than 10 minutes, especially on evenings when a light, comforting meal was all that was needed. The preparation was wonderfully simple. Water or milk was brought to a gentle boil before cream of wheat was slowly stirred into the pot. Within just a few minutes, the cereal thickened into a smooth, creamy bowl. A spoonful of butter melted across the top, followed by a sprinkle of brown sugar that dissolved into a rich, caramel-like sweetness. Some seniors added a dash of cinnamon or a handful of raisins, turning an ordinary bowl into something that felt homemade and comforting. The aroma was warm and inviting. The buttery fragrance blended with sweet brown sugar, filling the kitchen with a scent that reminded many people of childhood mornings and family breakfasts. Every spoonful was silky, creamy, and gentle, making it an excellent choice for anyone who wanted a satisfying meal without heavy cooking. Its popularity came from both affordability and convenience. A single box could provide many servings, stored easily in the pantry, and required only one saucepan to prepare. For seniors living on fixed incomes, it was an economical meal that offered warmth, energy, and comfort while creating very little cleanup afterward. Although modern convenience foods have replaced many traditional hot cereals, cream of wheat still holds a special place in the memories of older Americans who appreciated its simplicity. It proved that even the humblest ingredients could provide comfort at the end of a long day. But the final forgotten dinner on our list is perhaps the most surprising of all, a classic that generations quietly relied on when nothing else seemed easier to make. Tomato sandwich with mayonnaise. Our final forgotten dinner may be the simplest one of all, yet for thousands of seniors living alone, it was a true taste of summer. During the 1960s and 1970s, a fresh tomato sandwich with mayonnaise was more than a light lunch. On hot evenings, when turning on the stove made the kitchen unbearable, this humble sandwich became a quick, inexpensive supper that could be prepared in just a few minutes. The recipe relied on only a handful of everyday ingredients. A ripe tomato was sliced thick and layered between 2 slices of soft white bread that had been generously spread with mayonnaise. A pinch of salt and freshly ground black pepper brought out the tomato's natural sweetness. Some people added a crisp lettuce leaf, but many believed the classic version needed nothing more. The sandwich was pressed together gently and served immediately before the bread could absorb too much of the tomato juice. Its appeal came from its freshness. The juicy tomatoes, creamy mayonnaise, and soft bread created a perfect balance of flavors that felt both light and satisfying. During the summer, many families picked tomatoes straight from backyard gardens, making this meal even more affordable. For seniors on fixed incomes, it was an easy way to enjoy fresh produce without spending much money or time in the kitchen. Although grocery stores now offer endless ready-made meals, this simple sandwich remains a cherished reminder of an era when the best ingredients often came from the garden instead of the supermarket. It proved that a satisfying dinner did not always require meat, complicated recipes, or expensive ingredients. These 15 vintage dinners remind us that some of America's most memorable meals were also its simplest. They were built on resourcefulness, comfort, and everyday ingredients that helped generations of seniors enjoy a warm meal without spending a fortune. Which of these forgotten dinners do you remember, or which one would you still make today? Let us know in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe for more forgotten American food history. These 15 vintage dinners remind us that great meals were never defined by expensive ingredients or complicated recipes. They were built on resourcefulness, practicality, and the comforting traditions that helped generations of Americans through busy days and tight budgets. While many of these forgotten suppers have quietly disappeared from modern kitchens, their stories continue to reflect a remarkable chapter of American food history. Which of these meals brought back memories, or which one would you still enjoy today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you love discovering forgotten recipes and nostalgic food traditions, be sure to subscribe and join us for another journey into America's delicious past.